Welcome everybody to the George Mokoena podcast. My name is George Mokoena. I am your host, and this is a place where I look at some stories that have caught my eye, and I tell you a little bit about what I think about them, and you guys get to tell me what you think in the comments. So please, feel free to comment on whatever I'm speaking about here, and then of course don't forget to subscribe, to follow, to do all of those wonderful things that you can do in order to support the platform. But let's get straight into the stories for today. Number one, we're going to speak about the Department of Sport. Gayton Mackenzie's Department of Sports has bailed out SAFA by giving them a 5 million rand advance on the grant that they usually get from the government. This is because SAFA has been struggling to pay player salaries and has been blaming it on partners paying late and all of that type of stuff. So Gayton Mackenzie stepped in and said, you know what, I'm going to make money available to give to the athletes so that they can spend Christmas with their families nicely and all of that stuff, which is incredible from Minister Mackenzie stepping in like that. Now, the other part of this is that SAFA has said that obviously they're going to need to pay it back next year, but they've said that they're going to be presenting a sustainability plan that's going to bring in more revenue and all of that stuff. Now, number one, I want to first send a shout out to Minister Mackenzie, saying that Minister Mackenzie stepping in and doing this. I think what he has shown is that there's a love that he has, or a love and a respect for sports that he wants to have, that he wants to be in it, and he wants to give to sports, and he wants to step in as far as possible. I'm glad that we have a minister that maybe is from outside of the system and is stepping in to try and make something different of everything. Very, very happy. I'm also very happy that this is not money that was given from taxpayers in terms of it being something of a gift. It's part of a grant that is already given to SAFA and is being advanced by government. So I'm glad that, for SAFA, they're not stepping in that way, because I still believe that SAFA, there's things that have to be done at SAFA and things that have to be fixed. They have to make sure that they can be profitable and all of those things, and it shouldn't start now when there's problems. It shouldn't start now when things are going wrong. That's what you want. That's when you want to step in. Because when we look at SAFA as a whole, you look at them and you say, but guys, a lot of you have been in SAFA and in footballing structures and in sports structures for the better part of a good 20 years. You guys have been there all through when we were going into the 2000s and doing all the stuff, especially if you look at Abu Jordaan. Why is it that in all that time, you haven't been able to craft a plan that makes it that you don't have to worry about monies receivable in order for you to be able to pay these players? How many sponsorship announcements has SAFA made where different barbecue brands and car brands, I don't want to say their names, but a lot has been announced over the past few months of sponsors stepping in. And I've often asked, what are those deals? What do those deals entail? What do those deals have that they're going to bring to our football tangibly that's going to help us out? And it seems as though all of the betting companies and everybody that's working with SAFA, it doesn't seem like that's enough to get SAFA anywhere. When I speak about the love of football and the love of the thing means that, sometimes you may not make a lot of money up front, but you're making sure that everybody else is looked after. You're making sure that the things that need to grow and be developed are being developed at that moment. And I think what's happening, especially with our football, but across the country really, what's happening, especially in our football, is that we have old crocs who once had that pure love and wanted to do things and wanted to expand our football and make it better and develop players, even if it was to the detriment of themselves. Now they're sitting back and they're going, we've got all of that. Now it's about power, it's about money, it's about what we can control, and the power, man. The king, it's cool dasami, man. When I walk into a place, this tunes sam's team instead of being for the good of the thing. Rugby is going through similar problems. They're going through financial problems. And what's happening right now is all of the unions as a unit are scrambling together to try and see what they can do. One of the things that have been put on the table is the Springboks and the ownership of the Springboks. An offer has come in for them to be privatized for an external company, an American company, to come in and take over the financial side of the Springboks, essentially being in charge of getting the monies and doing all of those type of things in order to keep the Springboks running. Right now, the unions are sitting together, and I believe it was 2 weeks ago, they declined an offer from that American hedge fund, and they said that they can't put the heritage of African rugby, of South African rugby, into American hands with the type of controls that those guys would have. There's certain voting things that are happening. But now they've come together and they're trying to put together some sort of consortium with the guys that are already there. Abo Motsepe, who own teams that side, Abo Rupert, and all of those different owners. They're trying to come together as a union and see how they can increase South African rugby, or make sure that South African rugby is financially sustainable, owing to the fact that these teams are now playing overseas. They're now doing all of these things. Those are people that love the sport that they're building. Those are people that understand that for them to be successful, there's certain things they're going to have to put down that are not going to be long-term good for the rugby, but also the love that part of the argument was we cannot sell out our rugby in order for that to happen. And they're actively looking for things to move forward. What's the commercial plan for iBafana Bafana? What's the commercial plan for SAFA? Right now, the rights are with SABC and with Supersport, and they've got all of these things. But what are they doing to try become more successful financially? Are they even moving towards it? I did a video where I spoke about Gayton McKenzie, and I said, Gayton McKenzie, Minister, please don't give them money because they don't need your money. They need to spend the money that they have properly, and they need to generate. Because a worrying factor in South African football is that we've created a grant culture there, where even in the PSL, you see a lot of teams who are getting by simply by the grant. You're seeing a lot of teams that are getting by off of the goodwill of EPSL and the deal that Irvin khoza signed with Supersport, and the type of distribution they have when they're giving money to everybody equally. Are we not just lazy? Or are we not just comfortable in the fact that somebody's going to come save us, but that we don't have to go and do things ourselves to try and fill out stadiums, to try and sell kits, to try and make our national teams, who are doing incredibly well? Banyana, the current WAFCON champions, had an incredible World Cup run. Bafana, AFCON third place. Incredible AFCON run. They're getting ready to try and qualify for the next one and go through to the World Cup. Well, we've qualified for the next one. They're stars. Ronwen Williams, we'll speak about him in the next segment. Ronwen Williams is winning awards. 9th best goalkeeper in the world. He's just won Interclub Player of the Year, Goalkeeper of the Year at the CAF Awards. We're seeing Mamelodi Sundowns going through to the Club World Cup. How are we leveraging all of those things? A lot of the money in sports doesn't just come to you. You have to do things around it. And I feel like SAFA has been sitting and surviving by the good graces of these teams. I mean, they wanted to take some of the bonuses. They've been surviving off the good grace of these teams, good grace of people like the Department of Sports, good grace of people like the Motsepe Foundation. I feel like there needs to be a proper, real conversation around how do you commercialize our football? And how do you change SAFA? And I'm sorry, I don't think the answers are going to come from Danny Jordaan. I don't think the answers are going to come from Abu Mamriya wanting to come back into the football. We have to, treat this thing with the respect that it needs to be treated with. And thank you to Abu Motsepe, thank you to Abu Gayton McKenzie, who don't mind then going into the coffers of their institutions, of their own pockets, of their foundations to bail us out. But at some point, these structures have to be able to stand on their own. And I don't know if that's going to happen. And I don't know if we're going to wake up one day and Danny Jordaan and them and his vice presidents and the National Working Committee are going to change their minds. The National Executive Committee are going to change their minds. I feel as though our football is going into a very dangerous place. a very, very dangerous place. And if we don't wake up now, and if we don't make moves, and if we don't disrupt, and if we don't evolve, we might not have as good of the structures and facilities and admin and all of that. That won't be enough to save us. On to the next topic. Let's speak about the CAF Awards. The CAF Awards happened last night. We had a bunch of people winning. Men's Player of the Year was Ulukman, Ademola Lukman. Women's Player of the Year was Barbara Banda from Zambia. We had Club of the Year being Ahly, National Team of the Year being Ivory Coast AFCON winners. I'd like to send a proper shout out to Ronwen Williams for winning Goalkeeper of the Year at the CAF Awards, but then also winning Interclub Player of the Year, Interclub Player of the Year at the CAF Awards. Interclub means players who are stationed within Africa, essentially. So if you're Percy Tau won the last one, if you're in Africa and you're playing club football in Africa, that is the award you can win. But there's a couple of things that worry me about the CAF Awards and CAF in general. Here's one. I just noted that Ronwen Williams was Interclub Player of the Year and Goalkeeper of the Year. Yet, Andre Onana made it into the African best 11. For what? I don't know. When you look across all of those picks, they have a distinctly European feel to them, where we're not shining the light on some of the teams that are doing incredible. Ahly won their 12th Champions League. Not one player could get in. Versus players who find they're good, they play in Europe, aren't doing incredibly well, or their teams aren't doing incredibly well that side. Surely you should see more of Ahly players, Sundowns players, those type of players being shone a light on. So that's the first part. There's a very European feel to this thing. There's a very, there's a condescension. And maybe you're not doing it. You're not doing that, bringing in the interclub players into these best 11s. You're not doing it just for the fact that they had very good seasons. Maybe part of the reason you bring them in is that you're saying, here are our best players. Let's market these people. Here are our best coaches. Let's market these people. Let's make African football look a certain way, because these are opportunities for public relations where you can change how African football is viewed. But if it serves as a place where you're going to still you're going to still try and appeal to Europe, you're going to still try and give them praise, you're going to still try and play yourself small, then how can African football grow? I've said before that the Ballon d'Ors, the Champions Leagues, that side, all of that stuff purely exist at a certain level to heighten what we think of what Europe does. Guys, I don't watch Slavia Prague. I don't watch Benfica. I don't watch Sporting. I don't watch Brighton. You know, we don't watch the 3rd, 4th, 5th best teams in Germany. We don't watch the 6th, 7th, 8th best teams in Spain. But every time they've got a chance to wrap it together, they do it in such a way that they shine such a great light on European football. So why can't we as Africa shine that light on African football as a whole and make sure that our best performers, the clubs, the coaches, you know, put Abo Rulani on the stage, put Abo Coach Pitso on the stage, take Abo Marcel Collar, take the different people that are big, take the different owners, bring the different clubs, do all of that. And I think part of the problem with CAF is also something that's highlighted by these awards. You know, in Africa, we have a thing we call Sub-Saharan Africa, which is basically, when you look at a map where they show you it, Sub-Saharan Africa is about 90% of the African continent, is separated from the north. And these awards happen in Morocco all the time. We know that the headquarters are in Morocco, like Ntate Motsepe's actual office. Yes, there's a satellite office all over, but his actual office sits in Egypt, I believe it is. You know, when you watch these things, you look at the accessibility, where the presentation was off, All of us who are trying to watch those awards from, I'm in South Africa. All of us who are trying to watch those awards from sub-Saharan Africa. The sound was off, the translating was not making sense at times, the presentation. Because I think it's not catered to all of us. And if CAF wants to be a superpower organization in world football, I think you need to find ways to bring us all into this. When you have your awards, when you have your opening ceremonies, when you have all this stuff, I can't be going on to TikTok. This happened with AFCON. I can't be going on to TikTok and watching your ceremony live and it's in French. I can't be watching your awards and there's no representatives from South Africa, from Zimbabwe, from Namibia, from all of these other countries. It's a very West and North African facing thing. And maybe now we need to start asking questions about, man, can we make this a whole encompassing thing? And I know that Motsepe has tried to do it with the AFCON, making sure that free-to-air broadcasters like SABC have the rights so that more people can log in, can turn on their TVs, can watch. You know, it's so hard to watch a CAF Champions League game. If Sundowns is not playing or Ahly is not playing or one of the big guys, can I turn on the TV and access that? When we are talking about the build-up towards Abo CAF awards and all of those things, how much has been orientated towards other audiences to say, okay, in South Africa, between PSL matches, we're going to show you, man. We're going to show you an advert about what happened at AFCON. We're going to show you an advert about what happened at WAFCON, an advert about what's going on in the CAF Champions League. What happened last year? Okay, how many times as South Africans, let's be honest, have we seen Ahly lifting a trophy? For us to care and know. In fact, the Super Cup that's played between the winners of the Confederations Cup and the winners of the Champions League was played in Saudi Arabia. Not Ivory Coast, not Ghana, not Nigeria, not South Africa. They took it that side. Already, those teams take part in what's called, I believe it's the Emirates Cup or the King's Cup, where they have countries from like Egypt, Morocco, playing with countries from the Middle East, your Qatars, clubs from your Middle East, your Qatari clubs, your Saudi Arabian clubs, your Middle Eastern clubs. They have their own tournaments and all of that stuff. So who does it serve? And I think what is holding Africa back very, very badly is this thing where we want to impress everybody but your audience. You have PSL teams talking about corporate sponsors, talking about all of those things, going to all types of stadiums. Stadiums are built in the middle of nowhere. Now you're not even servicing the people that are meant to be following your team properly. No fan clubs. No activations, no outreach, none of those type of things to try and get your audience. That's now at a club level. Now, when you look at the African level, man, why are you looking at Visit Saudi Arabia and trying to look good for Gianni Infantino, who you should, FIFA president, but secondary to the people who actually watch and follow the football? You know, if we weren't avid football watchers, we maybe even don't even know about those CAF awards. So is CAF accessible? And maybe I can even speak from a point of privilege to say that South Africa has the structures, the admin, the stadiums, the this, the that, the that, the this, the that, to show you that it's not even about making or speaking about the resources. There are other countries that have the resources that don't get these things, but you're part of sub-Saharan Africa. Guys, the Champions League was switched this year in Europe to accommodate the big clubs. Okay, to say, no, big clubs, because you're complaining about money, let's make this an actual league so that you guys can play. But you know what secondary thing that helps with? It helps with the smaller clubs. So now you have more chance of your Jwaneng Galaxy playing Al Ahly. What does that mean for that game when Al Ahly goes to play in Botswana? What does that mean for the accessibility of the football as a whole when they do Europa League and they do conference leagues and they cover them properly and they market them properly and they make them available properly? That's how you create a juggernaut. But if we're still going to have a separation between Europe and a separation between Europe and Africa, and then intra-Africa you have a separation between sub-Saharan Africa and the North is actually linked to the Middle East and also maybe to how? Look at what FIFA did with the World Cup, is my last point here. Look at what FIFA did with the World Cup. They literally gave it to they're doing a whole 3 countries are going to host it in South America. So there's going to be 6 teams that are going to play in South America at some point. Then Morocco, Spain, and I'm forgetting the other country. They're going to host it together. But then they tick it off by saying, the World Cup is coming back to Africa. But it's really going to Morocco for a couple of games. And it's shared with Europe again before going to the Middle East again. Look at that. Can we have a commitment by CAF to really try and make African football for all of us? Because there's a lot that we stand to benefit from it, and there's a lot of financial gain that is yet to be unlocked by CAF by them being so separated. But in any case, let's move on to the last topic. Okay, the last topic that I want to speak about, right? Sorry to interrupt the video that I'm sure you're enjoying, but I just wanted to say thank you for all of the support that you guys have shown me and my Overthinking Football platform. I'm a one-man band that's doing all of this, and I really do enjoy the comments about how, Supersport needs to come fetch me and SABC and all of that stuff. And I think it speaks to the quality of the content, but also the amount of effort that I put in. So I just wanted to say thank you. But the truth is that Abu Supersport and all of those guys, yes, we're competing with them, but it's a completely different place. The sponsors are looking for former players, and to be honest with you, running some of these things is getting so difficult, and things have changed at home. So financially, it's a whole different world. So I wanted to try something new and come to the overthinkers, the people who watch the content, and say it would be incredible if you guys could contribute monthly towards the platform, towards keeping my lights on, but also making sure that all of the crazy things that I want to do, that I want to take Supersport on with, I can actually do. And just for 20 Rand every month, I think that would be an incredible contribution if you can make it. It may sound like a little, but if we can get a lot of people behind it, then we'll be able to carry on doing what I do. I'll be able to carry on giving you the content and also expanding it, because we don't have shows like this, and us content creators need help from our audiences. So I just came here to ask you if you can. Here is the account number that you guys can use in order to contribute. And I think, I'd be very grateful if you would. But anyway, let's get back to the video. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. In everything that happened with Mamelodi Sundowns last week, with the coaches changing and all of that stuff and the questions we are asking, there's a very interesting thread that I picked up on. And it's encompassed in a quote that was said by Chairman Tlhopane Motsepe, Dr. Motsepe's son, who is the chairman of Mamelodi Sundowns. He said in the press conference, "We should not be slaves to our previous success." And that quote had me thinking, is South Africa, as a footballing country, do we pine so much for what we call our football, that we don't realize that maybe we haven't been successful like that? We look over the results that have come from that football, yet we love it so much that we don't care whether it's right or wrong. And this thing plays out everywhere. So I'll give you an example. Bafana has Coach Hugo Bruce, possibly the most successful coach in the last 20 years, Bafana wise, in terms of what he's been able to do, qualifying us quite twice for AFCON, getting us to the semi-finals, having 2 years where I think his win percentage is 50% or just over 50%. He's done a lot, but yet he also holds the distinction of being the most the most hated coach, the most pushed back against coach. You know, we speak about his selections, we speak about all of that stuff, and I don't think we've accepted and loved him properly because he doesn't play the type of football that South Africans tend to love. Now, in a grander, broader scheme of things, where I want to take this conversation is that there's two ways to look at this thing. There's two situations where I'm seeing South Africans, hesitate. So I'm going to start off with the easier of the two. Mamelodi Sundowns has now moved away from its South African core of coaches and developing South African coaches and doing all of that stuff that Tate Motsepe has spoken about. We've now got an international technical director, sporting director, who is in charge of Mamelodi Sundowns. We've now got an international coach who's not from South Africa, who's not necessarily black. And we've now seen, you know, Sundowns shift towards a worldlier view. And when they've shifted that way, there's been a conversation when Ukadoso was brought in, when Rulani was moved out, that is Sundowns losing its culture? And is Sundowns losing what makes them Sundowns? So the change that I believe Mamelodi Sundowns is trying to do is to go, okay, fine, if we want to be successful in the world, maybe we need to start adopting some of the things that are done in the world. Maybe we need to change our structures, maybe we need to change our players, maybe we need to change the positioning of the club and all of those type of things. And there's been a little bit of pushback because there's a risk of maybe you might lose Shushan and Piano as it is right now. And to be frank, as successful as Shushan and Piano has been locally, can Shushan and Piano win you trophies? Because it's been failing up there. Different conversation, but it's been failing up there. So is Sundowns well within its rights to say maybe the next step that we need to take is to go into the direction they're going into now? And it might be uncomfortable, and it might be new, and it might be risky, but it's something as a club that needs to be done so that Mamelodi Sundowns can move into the future. I did a video about the crossroads where Sundowns was, where it's either you keep Pitso Mosimane, Coach Mangoba, you keep that system, you carry on iterating on that system, and you say, okay, after Mangoba, we're gonna groom somebody. So Mangoba Zoibamba for 3-4 years, Sikrumu, and that person is gonna come in from inside. Maybe Orulani is gonna get 5 years. Loftman is coming in under him. He takes over, similar to Pitso and Mangoba and Rulani. That the way that chain went, and you continue creating South African excellence that way. So that's the first one where it makes sense. Okay, you know what, man? You guys have done as much as you've done. You've spent all the monies. Maybe you need to take the next step and do something different to try and get to the places where you want to go. Sometimes you have to change you have to do things different if you want different results. Fine. This is the second one. The second one is the one that's a little bit more tricky. And the second one is where we're going to speak about the Kaizer Chiefs. You know, when you listen to Kaizer Chiefs conversations, you hear two things that are mainly spoken about. You hear quality of players, and you hear our football. Now the question becomes, what is Chiefs' football? Especially after 9 years of jumping from base to base. So I'm going to start there. What is Kaizer Chiefs' football? Because let's be honest, this is not the Kaizer Chiefs of Shabalala and Yeye. This is not the Kaizer Chiefs of Doggies or Boskara. It's not the Chiefs of Abu Asin Tweleng. That identity has been watered down to the point where I believe it well and truly does not exist. I think Kaizer Chiefs is past the point where you can go back and say, we want to build on this thing. At least with Sundowns, they know that, okay, Shushan and Piano might have gotten lost at some point, but then Coach Pitso came in and they started rebuilding what Shushan and Piano means for the modern world, and Abu Rulani could then build on top of that. I think we are so far away from what Chiefs was that you have to look at something different today. And you have to at least be honest as to where Chiefs is after 9 years trophyless, after 9 years riderless, after 9 years, or at least let's say 6 years of bringing in random players and bringing all that stuff. Because when we speak about the quality of player, is the quality of player down to the player themselves and how adaptable they are? In terms of the player, man, they can play multiple positions, they can do multiple things on the pitch. How many of those players exist within our league right now? And how many of them were built and developed? Not found as the finished article. Can you build and develop, number one? But number two, what are you basing that quality on? Because I could have the best player in the world, but if they're playing in a system that doesn't make sense for them, am I now not killing the quality of that player? Am I now not looking at that player and saying, yeah, no, yazi hinkomo lo muntu. But the truth is that you're judging a fish by its ability to fly. But here's the most interesting part, and especially with the Kaizer Chiefs, that I want to ask a question of. In the past 20 years, let's say post-Dimitri, maybe pre-Steve, right before Steve came in. Yeah, let's say post-Steve Kompela, Coach Steve Kompela, let me be respectful. The closest we've come to being an uber successful club, we won 2 leagues under Stuart Baxter. We know the type of football that he played, very heavy set play reliance, very heavy transition reliance, those type of things. He won the league twice. Then the next time we touched the top, lost it on the final day, it was with Ernst Middendorp. We know his football. It was helicopter football. It was, hey, cross and score, basically. Then after him came Gavin Hunt, who also doesn't play an exciting brand of football, but he almost won us a star. I believe that if he wasn't fired before those semi-finals, he probably wins us a star as the Kaizer Chiefs. Now the pattern here says that the football that has been successful for the Kaizer Chiefs has been the ugly football. So are we not chasing a pipe dream to say that we have this beautiful yazikasi football, it looks like Shushan in piano, man? Or are we lying to ourselves? And the truth is that the real football achieves that is successful happens to be the one that we don't like. And maybe we should be building on that football instead of praising people who have played football that is great to look at. But I think Coach Atazwani finished 5th. That was the highest maybe that football has given us. Maybe you could say Coach Steve did something nice. I'm not going to say that he was useless. He was top 3. He was getting to the finals and all of that stuff, but couldn't get over the line. Similar to how mamelodi Sundowns is looking at their football and saying, we're playing Shushan and piano. We love Shushan and piano, but can it get us over the line? Can it, man? It hasn't been able to get us over the line. Man. And then it brings us to the broader conversation about South African football as a whole, where you look at the Pirates, one of our most exciting, great teams, 23 points away from Sundowns. Because the truth of the matter is, whichever way you go with it, I think our teams are not willing to do what needs to be done either way. If you look at it from the South African context, Patrice Motsepe put hundreds of millions of rands, I'm sure it's over R1 billion, that is put into that team 20 years in order to support the local coaches, in order to make sure that they're grooming, that they're structuring, that they're doing all that stuff. Are we willing, as South African football, the people who are running it, the fans, on the ground level, all of that, are we willing to invest in it in order to build it to a place where it can be a world-beating type of football? Not something that we're naturally gifted with. You know the conversation about being natural gift. You're naturally gifted at playing this football. I'm not going to develop you further because, hey, lentoni mnandi ku-10. I'm not going to teach him the other things that make him go from a South African 10 with great ability to a South African 10 with great ability that has added on other things that is now competing with the world. Similar to Abu Penny. I'm sure Penny had great natural ability. but he was groomed that side, and they added the boring side. How do you run? How do you do this? How do you make this? How do you do to make him a world-beating striker? Are we willing to do that with our football? Number one, and I would venture to say no. But then number two, are we being honest with the fact that even at Bafana, even Sundowns to a degree, when they scaled the top of the mountain, they weren't playing South African football? And maybe we need to be honest and say, yazini guys, maybe iskop and donor helicopter is the way to go. Maybe at that level, Shem, you have to put down this ideal that we have and play that football, because that football gets you results. So I feel like as a country, we're sitting at a place where we've got our football, which is really good, but we're not willing to take it to the next level, or put resources towards taking it to the next level. That means let's study Tito and break down about Tito, about Skara. Let's break them down, like put it down all the way down to the bare bones. Study it. Sprinkle some of the international influence on it. Take some other things. Build it. You know, I often watch Abo Pep, and I watch breakdowns, and I watch Potifo football. You've heard about Rulani speak. When they speak about international football, Kibo Catenaccio. And they can break it down. Catenaccio is having 5 defenders, and you do this and you do that, but it becomes a 3, and da-da-da-da. Abo libero, when you play as a libero, this is fundamentally what the player has to do, and they have to know, and they have to move, and they have to do whatever. But when you look at South African football, have we broken down Ishugela? Have we broken down Ubamnandi? Have we broken down those concepts to the point where we can study them and improve them? Where's the South African book that explains why a South African 10 is strong? What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? How do you take those strengths and make them stronger? How do you take your weaknesses and make them smaller? Because a lot of the time when we speak about South African football, we speak as though it's bad. Hey, lahle yonke man. Lahle. Umfundo uyatribula. Oh, lahla. Instead of going, technically, he doesn't lose the ball. He's press resistant. Let's work on that. Or what if he can learn how to run? Let's teach him how to run like this. Let's teach him when the game is quiet, we do this. Why do we send our players to Europe? We send our players to Europe because at Europe, they teach them the boring things. What's stopping us from adding those boring things to our football already and building from that and making it strong? And it's going to take resources similar to what Tate Motsepe has put towards it. And you look at SAFA, and you look at the PSL, you look at the teams, you look at our academies, you look at our development, and you're going, but you guys don't have a commitment to doing that. You want your work to be done for you. You want Pep to figure out this new style of play and implement it and play it at Man City, then Utloi Foster come. And Utloi Foster carry players that don't understand what you're doing, instead of looking at your problems and solving them. Then, on the other side of it, now we have to battle with the other side. You know, this idea of Middendorp not being liked at Kaizer Chiefs and he left because of the style of play is not new. We had coaches like, I believe his name was Jeff Butler, in the 80s and the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken, who won everything. Like he did trebles. They still kicked him out because the fans hated him. Now Stuart Baxter, 2 leagues, kicked out. Ernst Middendorp gets us to the final day, kicked out because of the style of football. Is there then, if you're not going to invest, maybe then you need to sell out completely on this side and say, that has been our most successful football. And I'm not even lying when I say that. In the last 15, 20 years, that has been our most successful football. It put trophies into our hands. It put us so close to the top. It got us into the Champions League. But we're still fighting against it. So maybe, like I'm saying, as Chairman Klopi was saying, we should not be slaves to our previous successes. Because those previous successes are different environments, different people, different capabilities, different skills. It was a different world. Maybe we need to swallow our pride and say, guys, maybe that's where we need to go then. And I'm specifically saying it because we're not nurturing the other side. We're not nurturing our football. We're not modernizing our football. And when I say modernize, I mean, can we get the books and the papers and the tactics that are South African, where we know ourselves fully? Because we're also diluting when we bring in a lot of foreign coaches and a lot of people that come in, and they come in with their own ideas that come from built up places that side, with their own theories and philosophies and books and breakdowns and all of that stuff. And that makes us lose a little bit of the thing. Let's not rely on our natural gifts. Let's build on them. We've got some of the greatest minds in football, yet we're so European focused. Instead of looking back and going, ah. And then when the European comes and they win, you look at them and you go, ah, again. Something needs to be done and we need to move in a certain way, but it might mean that you have to forget about what you know and look to the future, or you have to really know what you know, deep down scientifically, in order to move forward. It's been incredible. Thank you guys for joining me. Please don't forget to subscribe, to like, to share, to comment. Help us as content creators that do these kind of things move forward. The power is with the audience. You guys are the audience. You guys are the strength of everything that we do. So please help us out. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll see you guys on the next one.